Well, last Wednesday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said something that recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and they moved the embassy, and it's actually already open, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They said that this move would help resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Now, Mr. Pompeo was saying the same thing about the U.S.'s recognition of the Golan Heights as Israel's property now. And this is what he said. He said, "We believe this increases the likelihood that we get resolution of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. We think it speaks with the clarity that takes this away from any uncertainty about how we'll proceed." Pompeo told the State Foreign Operations and Related Programs Subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee as it debated the State Department's 2020 budget request. And let me go on with the article. It says, earlier at the same meeting, Pompeo suggested that an upcoming U.S. peace plan would break with long-standing understandings on issues such as Jerusalem and Israeli communities, saying the old approach had failed. "I'm very confident that what was tried before failed, and I'm optimistic that what we're doing will give us a better likelihood that we'll achieve the outcomes that would be better for both the people of Israel and the Palestinian people as well," he said, according to AFP. When asked what the plan would entail, he says the U.S. plan will be grounded in the facts on the ground and a realistic assessment of what would give us a good outcome, he said. Now, of course, we know that this plan will not be disclosed before the April 9th Israeli elections, where it's being projected that Mr. Netanyahu will win again and will likely be prime minister. And what I mean likely be prime minister is that the person who can form a government is the one who will lead as prime minister for Israel. And, you know, according to Stratfor, whoever wins the Israeli election is still going to have problems because the tide is changing toward Israel as far as the U.S. is concerned. It says, in fact, in an article by Stratfor, it says how generational trends could complicate the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And some of the highlights of this article, it says that demographic changes in both the United States and Israel are creating a political dynamic that will cause the allies to disagree more often over major aspects of their regional strategies, including Iran and the Palestinian territories. In other words, Iran may not be seen as big of a threat as far as the United States is concerned in the years to come, as what Israel believes will constitute a threat. And the reason for this change, it says, that's because an increasing share of young American voters with different attitudes toward Israel are steadily showcasing their influence on U.S. politics. If that pattern continues, it would reduce the electoral cost for U.S. officials who seek to pursue policies that do not align with Israeli strategies. Meanwhile, a rising tide of religious nationalist voters in Israel will cause it to drift toward policies that would clash with the changing attitudes in the United States. That would create a strategic situation in which the United States would be more likely to use its military, diplomatic, and economic leverage to bring Israel closer into line with its own strategy. And frankly, I'm surprised it's taken this long for that to become an issue. You know, for years I've always believed that at some point in time that the United States would use its military, diplomatic, and economic leverage to bring Israel closer into line with its own objectives. And what I mean by that is that if in fact this Trump deal of the century at some point in time does not please Israel and they decide to reject some parts of it, it wouldn't shock me a bit if the Trump administration used its military. In other words, it may threaten to cut military aid to Israel, which totals somewhere around $35 billion over, I believe, 10 years. This diplomatic pressure, which the United States is doing some things where they recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and just recently, of course, recognize the Golan Heights as now Israel's property. Now, some may think that the United States is just being nice and is doing something good for one of its allies, but there will be a political cost in which I believe Israel will have to pay in the future, and it will probably come out sometime in the future regarding this Middle East plan. Now, I don't know how they're going to get, when I say they, the U.S., I don't know how they're going to get the Palestinians back to the table, but at some point in time, we know that has to happen. Now, they may have to bring in the European Union to help reassure the Palestinians that something good is going to come of this plan. As you know, the European Union just announced that they would not recognize the Golan Heights as Israeli land anytime soon. So that certainly puts the European Union squarely upon the Palestinian side, in my opinion. But going on with the article, it says, to compensate for this potential shift, Israel will turn to other powers, great and small, to buttress its economic and military security and reduce America's ability to impose conditions on it. Possible allies include, now this is kind of shocking as far as I'm concerned, not only major powers like Russia and China. As you know, China is now renting a port, when I say a port, a seaport, in Israel right now. So they're already making headway with these particular nations. Of course, that does not please, nor does it sit well with the United States. And some of the other regional allies that that Israel is starting to become chummy with, of course, is the Gulf Arabs. Now, of course, they did not approve of, at least out loud, the U.S. recognition of the Golan Heights for Israel. But that's not going to stop them from normalizing ties with Israel. And you might say, well, when are they not normalizing ties? Well, just a couple of days ago, the United Arab Emirates Minister of State for Foreign Affairs called for better relations with Israel between an interview, the National Report reported March 27th. And looking at the article, it says why it matters. It says that his comments reflect political sentiment among many countries in the Gulf region interested in slowly normalizing relations with Israel. Now, the reason for this, it says the relationship is at least partly being fueled by a mutual fear of Iran and by desire for increased bilateral trade and security cooperation. So even though many of the Arab world, much of the Arab world did denounce out loud that they simply were not for this U.S. recognition of the Golan Heights for Israel, they're certainly not letting that stand in their way. They made, like I said, they made their noise. They voiced their opposition, but they're moving forward. So as far as I can see right now, I don't believe that it's going to be an obstacle to the introduction of this peace process, the Trump deal of the century, and it probably will not be an obstacle after either. But as we both know, April 9th is marching closer. We're somewhere around 10 days away, and I'm anxious to see exactly how this is going to play out. But one thing I want to say before I go is that with this generational falling away in the United States as regard to Israeli ties, this could play into what will happen in the future, which is known as the Gog and Magog War, and why the United States will not come to Israel's aid. With a shift away from Israel, and we really don't know at this point in time how far that shift is going to go. But one thing is for sure, the Bible does say that the shift will go far enough that that the United States and their allies simply will not jump in when Russia and Iran and Turkey and their allies come down upon Israel. So when this shift will take place and how quickly it will come is being indicated that it's probably going to be within the framework of the next 4 years. And that's at the very least, and probably before then. As I said, both of the constituents, both in Israel and the United States, they're changing. And their change is not pointing toward a mutual relationship between. I mean, they'll still be allies, but it could bring about a wedge between the United States and Israel. And the question is this peace process and Trump's consuming desire to bring about his deal of the century, is that when he's going to start forcing the hands of both the Palestinians and the Israelis in an attempt to confirm and make strong this agreement? Now, of course, we don't know who's going to bring this peace accord. It is stated in Daniel 9 and 25 to 27 that it will come out of the European Union. That leader will come out of the European Union. But right now, the Trump administration is in the driver's seat. So we do need to see how it's going to be processed, and if in fact he will make any progress, or if he'll just walk away from it when things simply don't go right. Or there could be another option, that is that he forces the two groups to make this peace process come true. So we'll have to wait and see how it comes out. And of course, if you don't know the Lord, today is the day that you need to get saved. We're all going to die, and we're all going to face God at some point in time, whether it be before the rapture of the church, or after the rapture of the church, we're all going to see God at some point. And the Bible says that Jesus himself said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father but by me. He says he's the only way to heaven. So if you haven't already, you need to make a decision to follow the Lord today. And there's no special prayer that you need to pray. It's just simply, Lord, come into my heart, save me. I believe that you died on the cross. I repent of my sins, and from this day forward, I'm going to serve you. And this message is for you that are already saved. You need to get a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide. You may not need it, but I can guarantee you have friends and loved ones who are going to need it. And you certainly don't want those who are left behind to tell your lost friends and loved ones how they need to react once the rapture takes place. So I'd encourage you to go down to the description section of this video and either get the free version, which is written in 9 different languages, or get the paid version, which is a paperback in English. Get it in the hands of your lost friend and loved one, and ensure that they will have instructions for when the rapture does take place. Or leave it behind in your house in plain sight for those who you know will be coming to your house once you have moved on. So I'd encourage you to do that today. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.